Welcome to Perspectives, a podcast by Essence Learning LLC, and a place where leaders learn from leaders. Let's join today's episode.
Hello and welcome back, Essence Learning leaders and learners. We are here today to sit down with the woman of Essence, Miss Valerie Wilson.
Hey.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing so good. How are you?
This is exciting to sit side by side with you.
Oh my goodness. It's been a long time coming.
Yes, one-on-one, you and I.
Yes.
Oh, and of course everybody.
Oh, everybody else. Yes, of course. We gotta include you guys. So, Valerie, can you tell us? It feels so odd calling you Valerie,
That's okay.
but
today, you
yes, yes. So, can you tell our listeners and audience a little bit about yourself? I know you as the woman of Essence, but can you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are?
Who I am, it's a hard question to answer. I'm evolving, right? So where I started and where I am right now is a long, long story, and we'll get through that throughout the next 30, 40 minutes that we're together. But initially, if I were to say who's the core of who I am, no matter where I started on my journey, I've always been an influencer. And so even as a young child, as a young adult, now seasoned adult, I still view myself at the core as an influencer, someone who's an advocate for others. And so I think, along the way, I identified myself as a teacher, I've identified myself as a mother, all of those things that have a quality and characteristics. But in all of that, no matter where I sit from a role perspective, at the core of me, I want to influence the results and to make things. So I call myself, I think, who I am as an influencer.
Oh my gosh, that actually summarizes a good portion of who you are, because you influence me,
awesome.
And I know you influence everyone around you. Can you tell us a little bit about that influence background of your professional background of where you came from and what made you shape your career?
I'm going to kind of start early in my life, just to kind of give some of those young, like yourselves, who are getting started in this field or in a profession. I started at 17 at a savings and loan in Ohio. And I started as a teller in the savings and loan. By the time I was 18, I became the head teller within that savings and loan. And if you could kind of think back to when I was 18, back in the 70s, that was unheard of. To me, I really didn't understand the impact of that or the significance of being a leader in an organization such as a savings and loan at the age of 18. But I had started working at 14. I started into a professional career at 16. So I had been in the corporate environment, if you will, for several years, even before I got promoted at 18. So when I moved here to San Antonio at the age of 20, I got into a leadership role right away here with a very prominent company. So the idea that I have never not been a leader. And so, but I never recognized that I had never not been a leader. I always thought that this was the path that everyone had followed. And so once I started hitting some bumps along the way, barriers along the way, I started recognizing what it meant to be that leader, what responsibility I had to those who didn't have the fortunate that I have. As a professional and as a leader, when I got here to San Antonio, I have managed probably about 15 to 20 people. And they were in a production type environment. And making that job valuable to them was key. They could come in and do the job, but they felt it was mundane. And so we became very productive. We had a lot of fun. They never wanted to leave the department. They were always engaging with one another. They were great teamwork. And so how did that happen? It wasn't magical, right? So we began to look at, as an organization, what were some of the things that we were doing to influence the behaviors and impact of them. That became my career now. It started me down as teaching and training and helping to create and build leaders. And so once we started creating and building those leaders and understanding that it's a technique, it's a skill set, it's concepts, it's training, teaming, then I was able to share those techniques with other leaders. So I was helping other leaders become better leaders, and I loved it. And so that became, you know, at the age of 25 or 26, I was doing that for young and old leaders alike. And that became what I really enjoy doing. I did it in the professional world, and I also found myself doing the same type of work in my church, you know, in the church environment. And so early on, took on roles there as a leader as well. So I've always found myself in that space. Fortunate enough, you know, I'm sure we'll talk about some of those barriers and some of the things that have come up along the way. But that's kind of been my progression as a professional.
That's amazing. Yeah. Oh my goodness. From Ohio to Texas.
Ohio to Texas.
Wow. Let's talk about some of those barriers. I mean, you know, many people know that Essence Learning is founded by an illustrious Black woman. Mm-hmm. What was that experience being a Black woman leader? And what were those barriers and obstacles that you faced?
I think we all hear all the time, you know, there was nobody there that looked like me. Mm-hmm. When I got into this space back in the 80s, there was really no women, really, you know, so we were getting into a leadership role where women, let alone people of color. So there were no women, there were no men of color, and then there were no women of color. And so for me to step into that space, I had to be cognizant of where I was at all times. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't focus so much on what I didn't have. I had to tap into the resources that I do have. And so what we want to do is, I'm at the table now, right? So what are you going to do about it? You can't sit here and complain about what they're not doing for you. And so I had to really focus on what were the things that I could take and do something with, you know? What were the opportunities? So if I had an opportunity to be a trainer and a teacher, and I was going to be the best trainer and teacher that they could find, I was going to be knowledgeable, I was going to continue to learn, I was going to be available, I was going to be a leader. And so I started to develop and to grow so that I could help develop and grow those. So gaining my credibility, gaining my space, gaining respect. So if I'm in a room across from you, I wasn't going to tell you what you couldn't do for me. I was going to really influence you to allow me to be better, the best at the table, so that when I said, hey, I want to bring on such and such to the table, you trusted my judgment. You trusted what I said. You trusted what I did. So it was a little easier to bring up the folks that were behind me. And they weren't all just women, and they all weren't people of color. There were people who had potential. There were folks who believed in doing the right thing, who wanted to connect, who wanted to be an influencer as well. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, so I didn't have just one type of person that I interacted with. I have, and probably if you know anything about Essence and you know about the people that we influence, it's all walks of life, it's all types of people. But as an African American woman, I had to gain trust, credibility, and those barriers came from people who, out of ignorance, out of hatred, didn't want you to succeed. Mm-hmm. There was a certain amount of space that men felt they owned and needed, and the more that women, people of color, started to infiltrate that space, the more threatened they seemed to become. And so that conversation that we're having today about, you know, equity and diversity, equity, inclusion, we didn't have that type of conversation then. It was find your place and stay in your place. There was oftentimes where you were talked to, down to, disrespected, not just made to feel, but told that there was no real space for you, that you are just the token. We need to fulfill an affirmative action number. And so that's what you were dealing with. And if you focused only on that negative, then it took you to the negative place, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, well, okay, well, I'm the token. I'm all right with that right now. Because it doesn't have to be that way forever.
Right.
But I'm in the door. Door's open. Mm-hmm. And I think when we talked about it in another session where we all sat down and talked about, kick that door open. Mm-hmm. I kicked it open. Yes. And I'm here.
I love that.
I'm here. And so by me being there, I was the best that I could be in that space at that time. One of the things that I always say to people, don't give them a reason to put you out. Give them a reason to keep you. So I made myself invaluable, that was something they couldn't replace. And so you just have to find those places. And once you're in there, don't focus on what you don't have. You know, kick that door in and say, okay, I'm here. Token or not, however I got here, I'm here. And I'm gonna make the best of that. And so it's been, I've been discriminated against. You know, as a not even a professional, you know, we've had crosses burned on in Ohio, crosses burned on our front lawn, bricks thrown through the window with, you know, go back to where you came from. You're not welcome in this neighborhood. Families telling their children they can't associate with us in the area. So all of that is part of what I guess pushed me.
Yes.
Knowing that people didn't want you there, it's like, well, you know, that's not your choice. You know, and I think my mom taught us at a young age, that's their problem to deal with. When people hate, discriminate, just like that's for them to deal with and not you. You go ahead and live your life. And so that's what I did, and it was very successful.
Wow, that is amazing. That is so amazing. It sounds like, so you use those obstacles and the things that, you know, try to break you down to really build you up. And there we go, to create your platform, which look, here we are now, Essence Learning. So when did you create Essence Learning? How did you create it? What was that? Tell me the story about Essence Learning.
Essence was created back in probably 2003. And really was created out of the need that I saw for improving leadership within the churches. Notice that, you know, people within our church, leaders within our church, were being put into positions without skills to actually influence people that were in their groups or in their ministries or whatever. And so I really wanted to take some of what I was learning in the corporate environment to the church and help them. So Essence came from Proverbs 9:9. Y'all can look that up. A wise man will hear and will increase knowledge is really what resonated with me. And so when the word, what do I want to call it? I call it Essence because that's the core. God is at the core and of all the things. And so Essence stuck with me. That became the name, and again, it was the Essence of Me was the first training course that we created, and there's a series around the Essence of Me, and Me stands for motivation and emotions. So what motivates me, what emotes me, the Essence of Me, and so there's a series of Essence, and I loved it, enjoyed it. I had great success. But it was part-time, right? I had a full-time job, I had children, I had a husband, I had all those things that I had to attend to, so it was part-time. So later down the road, I left the corporate about 2018. I left corporate world and decided, you know what? Essence is still there. So I pulled out the Essence of Me, and I was really inspired by the training itself. And I decided, you know, I'm gonna go down this road, and we're all faith, and jump in with both feet. In the last 3 to 4 years, it has really grown into something unimaginable in terms of I expected it to be a success, don't get me wrong. I don't do anything without faith that it's going to be successful. But to see and not from a monetary perspective only, but to see the support, the advocacy for what we're doing, the engagement and involvement for people like yourself and all of the people that work with Essence or affiliated with us has been my definition of success. You know, for us, for the last that people get behind us. The fact that we can put together a podcast and to be able to reach out to people and tell our story, to invite people in for some professional development and personal development. All of that to me defines success. So even though it's monetarily doing well, you know, I don't want to just begrudge that because that's a blessing from God. But the idea that there are so many people that are associated with us from all walks of life, from all socioeconomic it's just been mind blowing. I'm going to tell you how it's been mind. So 2018, left a very nice executive position, and then started my own organization.
Wow. And we are here and so glad that you took that leap of faith. So you talked about earlier balancing that, work life and, having your family, which is a good plug. If you go on www.essencelearning.net, you can find more information about some of our solutions that we offer for that. But can you talk? Yes, a balanced life, you guys.
That actual training came out of how am I balancing all of this, right?
Oh, okay.
How can
so it came from like your real life
from my real life experience,
okay.
And really how the skills and the techniques that I use to help identify and create boundaries, to create success in all aspects of my life. So you can do well in one and another one drops, and then you want. So as a woman, why can't I have it all? Why can't we have success in all areas? It's because we're not intentional and purposeful. And so balancing our life intentionally and purposefully. Everything is not as important every time, all the time, right? So today, my daughter is important, and that's where I put. So tomorrow, my job is important. So you balance it, but you have to identify intentionally and purposely, this is where I'm going to go. So we did a lot of, in that training, and I did a lot of list making and scheduling and task oriented. And so from there, I decided, am I spending my time in those places that are important to me, that bring value to my life, that bring value to my job, value to my family, value to my community. And when I decided that I was doing tasks that weren't important or valuable, then those stopped. When I found out I wasn't doing enough tasks that were important and valuable, I increased it. When I needed more development because I didn't know how to do that, then I spent time creating time for me to develop. And so I started balancing those things so that my life would be balanced. And that, the whole adage about I got to put on the oxygen for myself before I can put it on for somebody else. I wanted to be that representation for my family, for my community, for my job, for my career, so that they can see that she can balance her life, so can I. And so people started asking, what are you doing? How do you get everything done? And so I started the training to balance life, and very effective. Again, that started in the church as well. And then actually introduced it to a couple of companies that I worked for, and they took it on. And so that became a training that even now is probably still in a couple of the organizations that I have worked for. We called it something different because Balanced Life with Essence, but we gave them the skill set. So that's still some practices in some companies already.
That's great. So we talked about managing, your time and overcoming obstacles. Can you talk about your biggest obstacle you faced with Essence Learning, the business, the organization?
That's the amazing part about since 2018 to now. There hasn't been a real big obstacle. There's been situations to address, problems to solve for, but nothing has been an obstacle to our success or our effectiveness. I understand that there's a time for all things. Everything has to take its purpose and its time. So me getting in the way of that, trying to push it along faster than it needs to be, grow it faster than it should, all of those things can create obstacles because if you're not mindful that there's a season and a stage that everything has to go through. So I'm trying to navigate that to make sure that I don't push things beyond where I should be right now. But an obstacle to me is something that you can't overcome. An obstacle is something that is in the way of you having a view and a vision. That I haven't had that with Essence Learning. That obstacles in my own personal life, that because I've allowed, and that's one of the things that I don't allow people to, I don't allow you to take credit for how I feel. So I don't say, oh, you made me feel this way, or you put an obstacle in my way. Those are things that I can control. You can do something how I respond and react to it is another. So if you put something in my way, I don't view that as an obstacle. Like I told you, I kind of stand on it and say, you know what, okay, oh thanks, I can see a little higher now, you know.
Yeah.
So I may have to have climbed, but it just pushed me a little further onto it. So I don't really think of things as obstacles. I'm not ignorant to the fact that there are things that create hardship for me, that make things look harder. But I also know that just because it's hard doesn't mean I don't do it, right? So I don't view things as, I really don't view things as obstacles. I get discouraged, yes. I get tired, yes. I get frustrated. But I also know that's human. So I just kind of sit back, do what I do to overcome myself. Those things that get in the way, your doubts, my frustrations, all of that's within me. But all the things that are out here that I can touch, feel, move around, navigate. So my biggest, I guess probably the answer to that would be my own emotions is my biggest obstacle, overcoming that. But all the things that are out there, I don't think of them as obstacles. I really don't. I think the challenge is with problems to solve. But I know that, you know, I remember my mom saying if somebody else has done it, you definitely can do it.
Yeah.
And if somebody hasn't done it, you can find a way to do it. So it doesn't challenge me to say that, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to sit back and not move forward.
Right.
My biggest obstacle, I guess, to answer that question now would be me. So overcome that.
Wow.
My own fears and my own doubts and all of those things that come with things naturally.
Oh, that is huge. That's so encouraging and relatable to the human experience. I think we all can kind of just relate on some level to using those, like you said, using those obstacles to lift us up, and we all go through certain things. So just taking that, some people say with a grain of salt, but using that grain of salt to plant the seeds or whatever it is. Yeah. Oh.
Add flavor.
I love that. Yes.
One of the things that I don't want to sound trite about is that there are times when there aren't resources available, and there are a lot of people in situations that don't have some of the opportunities. What I want to encourage people is to say that, you know, I didn't have the opportunity to go to X, Y, and Z school, okay? That's an obstacle to success for some people. I didn't have food or, you know, access to ask for a job or something like that. Those are obstacles, yes. But to let that be known that that doesn't define who I am, that doesn't negate who I can be and my potential. And so what you don't have, and that's my whole messaging, I think, is don't focus on the resources that you don't have, but focus on the resources that you do have. What is in front of you, and then move small steps intentionally until you can move past the fact that high school isn't the most. I mean, I didn't have college, so does that mean you can't do things that college people do, not have that success? Now you figure out, what do I need to do to navigate that? And so the encouragement is to say that there are things that hold you back or that are in front of you. Don't let those be things that you can't navigate, that you're not willing to navigate. It's hard work. It has to be done, and it's purposeful and it's intentional. So it's not just, well, it's there and I can't. My messaging is, you know, it's there. Be real about it, and that's a situation that I've got to deal with, and then make it up in your mind that you're going to, and then navigate through that. So that I don't want to be trite to say, oh, there's never an obstacle that we all have them. But the idea that if we don't figure out within ourselves and decide within ourselves that we're going to navigate through that over it or over it, then you will get stuck. It will become big. Does that make sense?
That definitely makes sense. Definitely. Thank you for speaking to that. We have another question. So let's talk about the real.
Fine.
There are no Black women CEOs for any Fortune 500 companies, and Black women only occupy 1.4% of C-suite roles. Also, Black women-owned businesses grew by 50% in 2019. Woo woo. What advice would you offer a young woman trying to navigate into a leadership role in today's workforce or trying to start her own business like yourself?
Yeah, so the scriptures say that the older teach the wise, right? I think, to be honest, when I stop to think about, we can even have this conversation right now, that there are no black CEOs. I remember the conversation when there were no black people in the workplace. I remember the conversation when there were no African American women in leadership roles, period, whether it was a supervisor, manager, director. So to see, from my perspective, that growth has been satisfying. Not content. I'm not content with it, but I'm at least satisfied that we see that growth. So I don't, again, get stuck on the fact that we don't have. I look at what we do have right now. So the idea of what should we do in order to get the doors, the opportunities for women like myself to become CEOs of these Fortune 500, we've got to develop and grow Essence Learning. We've got to be mentors from wherever we are, encouragers. And again, what I think I am is an influencer. We've got to influence not just the people who are trying to move forward, the people of color, the women, the underrepresented groups. But we've got to create allies in the people who can help us lift. We can't do this by ourselves, obviously. So we've got to make sure that we're having productive conversations with people who can make a difference, right? Instead of telling them, you're this and you're that, here's how I need your support, here's how you can help in this situation. And then guess what? This is what I bring to the table. So we've got to be willing to say, just don't open the door because you owe it to me. Which I'm not going to say there's some truth to that. But the idea that you open the door and I bring such value that it would be unwise not to open the door. We've got to have that messaging to make it common and best practice. Then the other thing for the 50% of the women who have that space, they really need to open up themselves to be able to bring people on so that they multiply. So if that 50% becomes 60%, becomes 70%, we'll start to see over the years that multiplying, right? So my role in the position that I'm in is to multiply leaders like yourself, to make sure that I'm responsible and accountable for bringing up the women and minorities in the space, not only, but also inclusively, that you have as much opportunity as everybody else, and that I'm responsible because I'm in this space of removing some of those barriers and obstacles and helping you to navigate them, and not go on the old adage that we got to pull up yourself by your bootstrap. When I was your age, I used to have to do, no. What are some of the things that we could do to make, and I don't know that I'm a big component of everybody needs a mentor, but everybody needs someone that they can look to help pull best practices from or better approaches to. So, you as a person coming up, you've got to look for that in a person as well. Instead of saying, hey, tell me what to do, you got to look at that person and say, here's what I like about this situation. How can I grow to that or emulate that or make that a part of who I am? So there's work on both sides, and it's not something anybody's going to give you. It's not something that anybody's going to hand over to you. May not even open the door because you might have to kick that door in. But the idea, knock it down. But the idea is that it's now already growing, and we got to get in there and start reaping some of the things that we've already sown, and then plant some more seeds for the next people to come.
For the next people to show their essence.
Yes, show their essence.
Oh,
Who they are.
Yes, thank you
This was
so
fun.
much.
This was fun.
It
Thank
was
you.
so fun.
It's hard for me to talk about myself, but
Yes.
I hope I was able to answer some questions, inspire some people.
Yes.
Be that influencer.
Well, we hope you guys were influenced and that you were able to see Valerie's essence that she shared with us today. We definitely want to leave you with some of the solutions and offers that we have with Essence Learning. Valerie, would you like to share?
Gosh, yeah, balanced life, absolutely. It's a great opportunity for us to understand what I need to do to prepare myself, particularly in any role that you're in. Essence of respect definitely is one of our huge leadership development workshops, and we invite you to do that. So then we have that of generational differences. So we have quite a bit of courses out there, workshops out there, and then we do coaching and mentoring internally. We have a lot of solutions for our organizations as well, where we do analysis and solutions and strategies. So it's just not individual, professional and development. We do have a lot of offerings and solutions for small, large organizations that we do business with. So call us if you need us. We're always available. We have, as you can see, a wonderful crew in Tierra as part of our team. Give us a call or feel free to talk to us through our website.
Awesome.
Thank you for this, Tierra. This was fun.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much. We're so glad that you're able to join us again. We're going to have a part 2 to learn some more about Valerie. But this is a little bit of a sneak peek. So if you want to learn more about Essence Learning, again, feel free to go to our website. And we hope to see you, leaders and learners, real soon.
Welcome to Perspectives, a podcast by Essence Learning LLC, and a place where leaders learn from leaders. Let's join today's episode.